Hello everyone and welcome back to a short reviews video, this time for April 2020. If you are not familiar with the series, it's about those albums or EPs that came out the previous month that I thought that some of them were interesting, some of them were not that interesting, and I didn't have that many things to talk about with this particular album, so they're all just being put in this short review segment. Some of those albums I recommend them to you, some others were not that much to my liking. You might find something you prefer more. The ratings in these albums or EPs usually goes from 6 plus to 4 minus, and with that being said, let's get into the albums. I still haven't managed to really find the appeal from the sound of Thundercat. Yes, I like that the album is smooth for its most part, but it really doesn't come out as something more than just a very sort of standard smooth jazz funk, neo soul album. Really not something that really impresses me once again from the Thundercat catalog. So yeah, another sort of average mediocre album. Another artist that definitely I haven't managed to see the appeal is Yves Tumor. With this brand new album, he goes into a bit of a different direction. I like that the previous work had slightly more chaotic segments, like it had a very experimental track with Pius Mary. This album, on the other hand, as far as there are some decent ideas, especially towards the second half, for me it just sounds like another sort of basic approach on psychedelic rock music. So I really don't get why people just get so hyped and think that this is such a new or such a unique thing. Like taking apart some of the sort of glitchy and experimental elements which are not even that well developed in my opinion. I don't think we have another great album from Yves Tumor. I think it's another average work and that's about it. I thought that this mixtape could definitely have some potential to it, a sort of a smooth city pop album, but the instrumentals are just kind of okay for the most part. I recall that there were two or three tracks where the beats in particular were fairly interesting, but the main thing that I really didn't like about this album was the very obnoxious and annoying vocals, just filled with so many different effects that don't really come up as a very good result. The vocals usually come quite monotone, quite robotic, without that much of a passion to them, and so it kind of ruins some of the songs. But other than that, still, there are not that many other great elements to this album. It's just an average sort of electronic ambient and pop work. Northern Tongues is one of those artists that I feel I should like his works more than I actually end up doing. But I still don't think I found that many works from him that would work for me in this whole sound of dark ambient with industrial black metal, or this whole vibe of blackened noise. In general, this album, this brand new work, has some very nice and decent experimental approaches. I like some of the noisy, distorted and industrial parts, but still as a whole thing, as far as it is a short work, I still don't think it offers something pretty much that different from most of the works he has done recently. So for me, it's another work from Northern Tongues that it's kind of forgettable. Another work from Bladee that didn't really impress me. I haven't been able to get through a project from him. I think there are some interesting ideas with the futuristic production in some occasions, but in general, especially this short album, just sounds so empty that there could have been far more into lots of these tracks, and for the most of the part it just feels like a really just hollow and very unimaginative album that has some slight portions of some decent experimentations here and there, and still I'm not a fan of the vocals. And if you count out some of the ethereal vibes, we're talking about a very average and quite generic piece of like emo rap music. So yeah, wasn't really impressed with this new project from Bladee at all. Black Hand Path came out with two new releases, an album and an EP, which was part of like this quarantine process as they say themselves, and the albums definitely give this feel since they're only on Bandcamp and they're for free. Now the album definitely feels rushed, and it's definitely my least favorite work from Black Hand Path so far as a full project. As far as I was never like a huge fan of the projects for them, I definitely admired some of the very hardcore hip hop, some of the very nasty, and some of the very aggressive and experimental moments, which are at some occasions with this album, but it gets really messy with some of like the sound collages and some of the different and very weird glitch portions, and at the end of the day it doesn't come out as an amazing result. On the other hand, when it comes to the EP unreleased sounds, I think that it makes a fairly good introduction. I think the first track is definitely one of the greatest and one of the most dynamic things they've ever done, but still getting towards the other tracks of this EP, it also feels kind of a rushed project, like not really bringing the whole appeal from the sound of Black Hand Path. Other than that, quite decent projects, both of them, but that's about it. They're definitely sort of disappointing compared to some of their previous stuff. Doses Letalis made a limited edition cassette, which that work wasn't that bad. It's definitely really repetitive, it's pretty much the same thing, but I like the vibe, the sound of this thing. I like that it's sort of like this ambient noise sound, and it has a nice touch to it, and I like how it just goes and goes. It serves as a very interesting piece of background music, so I do recommend checking this one out. Yes, like I said, it's a very repetitive project, but it's still worth checking out if you want something kind of chill but also really dark. There are so many great things being said about this brand new album of Ulcerate, and I don't honestly see it. For me, it has this very experimental sound that you can get with artists like Portal, for example. There is this very doom sludge sound, some elements of post rock, but it's mostly this very intense technical death metal with also elements of like blackened technical death. So the album, yeah, it's really technical. Performances are top notch. Production is intense. It is very good, but there is really not an idea that could have been stuck on me. I would prefer something more simplistic or something that it feels that would serve more of a purpose to it, because this thing just ended up being a long project with so many moments that just came out as extremely just forgettable. So yeah, not really a huge fan of the project, but definitely some okay moments here and there, I guess. I really don't know what has happened with Kaliuchis. I mean, when she did her debut, she showed a more of an innocent and cute self. She would do this laid back neo soul and pop tracks that were fairly decent, and I think that her album was a good work with some very nice instrumentations around the gate. But now I see Kali Uchis is just turning into this girl with such a bad bitch attitude that I don't really know where this came from. And this also comes out with this brand new EP, like with the cover of this thing and some of the very cringy lyrics towards this very short, just 10-minute EP with some very minimal and so unfocused ideas and some terrible vocals at some occasions. So yeah, I don't really know what happened with this EP, but this is definitely just going downhill after having a really promising debut. That was definitely disappointing. Another month, another project from filmmaker, you know how it goes. Now this one apparently goes into the more dungeon side of his industrial techno direction that he has with pretty much all of his projects right now, and it is another okay decent work, but I'm just hoping for something more focused and something less rushed in the future. And that's all I have for today. Those were a few thoughts about some of the albums from April 2020. What's your opinion in any of these albums, like and dislike, and why? And what do you want me to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.